Have you ever wondered what really happens when we die? Not the story we've been told, not the rituals, not the idea of heaven or hell, but what really happens to the part of you that's aware, the part that feels, that watches, that loves? I don't mean the body, because that's easy. It stops breathing, the heart slows, and the body returns to the earth. But what about the awareness behind your eyes, the one that's been here your whole life, quietly watching it all unfold? Can that really just the sap? Sometimes I sit and think about how fragile everything seems. The body ages, moments pass, people come and go, yet somehow that silent witness inside remains untouched. It's the same awareness you had as a child, the same one watching this very moment. You might have changed jobs, lost people, fallen in love, been broken, but that quiet observer, that feeling of I am, never really changes. And maybe that's the first clue that consciousness isn't something that lives inside the brain, but something much deeper, some tea. It's kind of like how a radio doesn't create the music. Science, for all its brilliance, still can't explain why you feel like you. Feign the brain otten consciousness. It sounds. And I don't say that to sound mystical or preachy. I say it because deep down we all feel it. We've all had those moments when time seems to stop, when everything feels connected, when you sense that life is much bigger than this brief story of me. Maybe it's when you're watching the sunset, or holding someone's hand in silence, or sitting by a hospital bed knowing goodbye is near. In those moments, something inside why. You see, many ancient traditions, from Buddhism to modern near-death experiences, point to the same truth. Consciousness isn't something you have. It's something you are. It's not a product of matter. It's the field that holds everything together. And if that's true, then death is an end. It's a shift, like moving from one room to another, or like the ocean wave returning to the sea. The form dissolves, but the water remains. Maybe this is why people who've been declared clinically dead sometimes return with stories, not of darkness or nothingness, but light of peace, of being more alive than ever. Science doesn't quite know what to do with those stories, but they keep coming, thousands of them. Some describe floating above their own bodies, watching doctors trying to bring them back. Others describe feeling unconditional love, like every worry just melted away. And maybe these aren't hallucinations. Maybe they're glimpses of what it feels like when awareness is no longer trapped inside the limits of the body. What if death isn't a failure of life, but a continuation of it? What if it's the point where the dreamer wakes up from a dream? Maybe what we call the end is really a kind of remembering what we always were before we were born, before we had a name, before we had a story. It's okay if this sounds strange. It's okay to doubt, to wonder, to not have the answers. I think that's part of being human, living in the space between knowing and mystery. But somewhere deep inside, you might feel it too, that quiet knowing that nothing truly real can ever be lost. Because think about it, the moments you've loved most, the laughter, the warmth, the presence, they don't exist in time. They exist in awareness. And awareness doesn't age, doesn't fade, doesn't die. So maybe consciousness doesn't end at death, because it never really began. It's not something that started when you were born. It's what allowed birth to happen in the first place. It's the stage where every experience comes and goes, but the stage itself never disappears. And if that's true, then maybe life isn't about clinging to every moment, but about learning to let go, not out of despair, but out of trust. Trust that what we are can't be destroyed, that every ending is just a change in form, that even when everything seems to fall apart, something deeper always remains whole. I think there's something healing about that. To realize you're not just a body trying to survive, but a wave in an endless ocean, rising and falling, yes, but always part of something infinite. When you start to see yourself that way, fear begins to soften. You don't have to believe in anything. You can just feel it, the quiet truth that what you are can't die. And if this kind of reflection speaks to you, maybe take a deep breath right now. Feel your chest rise. Feel the space around you. That's life, not in some abstract sense, but right here in this moment, whispering through you. And if you want to keep exploring this kind of thing with me, the nature of awareness of life, of what it means to be, you can always subscribe, not because you have to, but because sometimes it's nice to walk together through the mystery. Because in the end, that's what we're all doing, walking each other home, one quiet breath at a time. You know, when I was younger, I used to think death was something far away, like a mountain in the distance. You could see it, but it didn't seem real, not until someone you love disappears into it. And then suddenly, that mountain moves closer. You start to wonder where they went. Are they still out there somewhere watching? Do they feel us when we remember them? Or are they just gone? Maybe that's a question we've all carried quietly in our hearts since the beginning of time. Because deep down, every culture, every story, every song, they're all trying to answer that same whisper. Where do we go when this ends? In those moments after someone passes, the air feels different, doesn't it? It's like something invisible has left the room. You can't explain it, but you feel it. The warmth, the energy, it's just not the same. And maybe that's not imagination. Maybe what we're sensing is the consciousness itself. The awareness that has slipped beyond the veil of what we call life. I remember reading stories of people who come back from the edge. People who were clinically gone for minutes, sometimes hours. Many of them describe something remarkably similar, a sense of detachment, peace, and clarity. They say they could see their own body lying there, but they weren't afraid. They felt lighter, freer, like a bird released from its cage. And they talk about light, not just any light, but one that feels alive, not blinding, but gentle, warm, full of understanding. Maybe that's the real essence of death. Not a punishment, not darkness, but returning, like a river flowing back to the ocean. The river doesn't die. It simply changes where it belongs. There's this one story that always stays with me. A woman who died on the operating table. She said she found herself in a place that wasn't really a place. It was vast, endless, but comforting. There was no time there. And she said she wasn't alone. There was a presence, not someone standing next to her, but a feeling of being held by something infinite, something that didn't need words. And in that space, she said, all her fears vanished, all her regrets dissolved. It was as if everything she'd ever done made sense. Every pain, every mistake, every love. It was all part of one great story she hadn't been able to see from the ground. When she came back, she said she didn't believe in life after death. She remembered it. And that word struck me. Remembered. As if we already know, deep down, that death isn't the end. We've just forgotten. Maybe that's why so many spiritual traditions, from ancient Buddhist teachings to modern mystics, speak about awakening. Because in a way, die before you die, meaning letting go of the ego, the false identity, allows you to see what's real even while you're still here. The Buddha once said that when you understand impermanence, you stop clinging. You stop being afraid. You start living with open hands, not tight fists. And maybe that's a real secret. That death isn't the enemy. It's the greatest teacher. It reminds us that every moment matters because none of them will last forever. It whispers, love now, forgive now, breathe now, because this exact heartbeat will never come again. When you really sit with that truth, not as an idea, But as something you feel, something changes in you. The small worries fade a little. You stop chasing so hard. You start seeing beauty in the things you used to overlook. Sunlight through a curtain, the sound of your child's laughter, a friend's voice on the phone. You realize that these are not small things at all. They're everything. And maybe that's what consciousness wants. To experience itself fully, to feel all the colors of being alive before it moves on. Because when we die, perhaps we don't go somewhere else. Perhaps we just wake up to the bigger reality that's been here all along. Think of it like a dream. When you're in it, it feels real. The people, the places, the emotions. But when you wake up, you realize it was all happening inside you. Maybe life is the same way, a dream within consciousness. And when the dream ends, we wake up not into nothing, but into more. So maybe when someone dies, we shouldn't say they're gone. Maybe we could whisper, they've gone ahead. Because if consciousness truly continues, then the bond we feel, the love we share doesn't end. It just shifts into a different kind of connection, one that doesn't need words or touch or time. And maybe that's why, sometimes in the quiet, you can still feel them. Not like a memory, but like a presence. You might be driving alone or standing by the window, and suddenly there's that warmth again, as if someone just said, I'm still here. And maybe they are. I think about that often. How everything we love is temporary in form, but eternal in essence. The laughter of your kids, the softness in someone's eyes, the way your heart aches when you miss someone. It's all part of the same current of consciousness, flowing endlessly between life and whatever comes next. So, if consciousness really doesn't end at death, then maybe our purpose isn't to escape life or fear its end, but to live in a way that when that final breath comes, we can smile. Because we've already touched eternity, not somewhere far away, but here, in every moment we truly pay attention. And maybe that's all awakening ever was, realizing that you don't have to wait to die to touch the infinite. You can feel it right now, in the space between two breaths, in the silence between two thoughts. That stillness is the doorway. It's okay if this feels hard to grasp. You don't have to understand it. Maybe you just need to rest in it. Let it whisper to you in its own way. Maybe you're not a person trying to understand consciousness. Maybe consciousness is trying to understand itself through you. And if you've been walking with me this far, maybe it's because some part of you already feels it. That quiet truth that death isn't the end. It's a transition, a homecoming. And that means, right now, you are already eternal. You just forgot for a while. So, if this speaks to you, if it gives you a sense of peace or curiosity or comfort, stay close. There's so much more to explore together. You can subscribe if you like, not because this is about answers, but because sometimes we all need a place to sit in the mystery together. Because maybe, just maybe, consciousness doesn't end at death. It just wakes up. There's a moment that comes to everyone sooner or later, a quiet one, when the noise of the world fades just enough for you to hear something deeper. Maybe it happens late at night when you're lying awake, or in the middle of a storm when everything outside feels uncertain. And suddenly, for a breath or two, you feel it, that strange, spacious stillness that seems to hold everything. Time slows down, and you realize that beneath all the chaos, something inside you never moves. Something beyond the story of your life, beyond the ticking clock, that maybe is consciousness itself, untouched by time. Think about it. Every memory you've ever had, every plan for the future, every thought about who you are, all of that happens in time. But awareness itself, it doesn't belong to time. It watches time flow by, like clouds drifting through a still sky. You, the real you, are not the clouds. You are the sky. The stories, the emotions, the faces, the years, they come and go, but the space that holds them never changes. That's why, even though your body has grown and your life has changed, there's something inside you that feels exactly the same as when you were 5 years old. That same, I am, that's the part that doesn't age. The part that might never die. When we start to see life that way, everything softens. Fear loses a bit of its grip. You stop thinking of consciousness as something you have and start realizing it's something you are. You don't own it. You arise from it, like a wave rising from the ocean, dancing for a moment, and then merging back into the water it came from. And maybe that's what death is, not the end of the wave, but the return to the sea. The thing about consciousness is it doesn't fit inside the boundaries we try to put around it. Space and time are like coordinates. They belong to the physical world, but awareness, it's everywhere, all at once. When people describe near-death experiences, they often say things like, I saw my whole life flash before me. But it's not that they saw in a line, like a movie reel. They say they saw everything at once. Every moment, every feeling, every choice, all unfolding together, like one great pattern of light. That's not something that can happen inside the brain, because the brain experiences things in sequence, one thought after another. But consciousness, in that state, seems to step outside the limits of time. Maybe that's because time, like the body, belongs to the dream. And when the dream ends, you wake up to reality where before and after don't exist, only now. And maybe this now, this eternal present, is what the mystics were trying to describe all along when they said, heaven is within you, or nirvana is here and now. They weren't speaking in riddles. They were pointing to the same truth, that what you are has never left the infinite. It only forgot. If you look around carefully, you can sense it even now. The silence between sounds, the space between two thoughts. That's where the infinite peeks through. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to die to touch eternity. You just have to be still enough to notice what's already here. It's strange, isn't it? We spend our lives running towards something, success, love, meaning, peace, as if those things are somewhere ahead of us in time. But what if everything we've ever been searching for is right here, hidden inside the one who's searching? Maybe the journey isn't about reaching the future at all. Maybe it's about waking up to the truth that there's nowhere to go. When people talk about leaving their bodies during near-death experiences, they often describe moving through a tunnel toward light. But what if that light isn't place? What if it's the natural radiance of consciousness when it's no longer filtered through the limits of the brain? The tunnel might just be a symbol, the mind's way of translating a shift from form to formlessness. Because in that space beyond time, there's no distance to travel, no destination to reach. There's only awareness becoming aware of itself, pure, infinite, peaceful. And when they return, these people almost always say the same thing. There was no fear. They don't describe the light as something separate, but as something they became. I was the light, they say. I was everything. Imagine that. The end of separation, the end of loneliness, the end of needing to hold on. It's not a loss. It's a remembering. Sometimes I think we've misunderstood death because we've misunderstood life. We see them as opposites, but maybe they're partners, two sides of the same breath. You inhale, you live. You exhale, you die. But the breathing never stops. The rhythm goes on. Consciousness inhales itself into form, lives 1,000 different lives, and then exhales back into the infinite over and over. Maybe that's what eternity really is, not a long time, but the absence of time altogether, a stillness so vast that everything happens within it. yet itself never changes. You and I, we're like ripples on that still water. Temporary, yes, but not separate. And if that's true, then maybe there's nothing to fear, because nothing real can ever be lost. The love you've given, the presence you've shared, the awareness that moves through your eyes, it's all part of that infinite stillness. When the body falls away, the stillness remains just as it always has. And maybe that's what's waiting for us. Not judgment, not reward, but recognition. The recognition that we were never separate from it to begin with. So, when you look at the stars tonight, maybe take a moment to feel that the quiet knowing that you're not staring at the universe. You're part of it, made of it, lit by the same consciousness that burns in every sun. You are not small. You are not temporary. You are the space that holds it all. And if this feels peaceful, stay here for a while. You don't need to chase meaning. You can just let it unfold. You don't have to solve the mystery. You can live inside it. Maybe that's what consciousness wants. Not answers, but experience. Not escape, but depth. There's something so fragile and so mysterious about identity. We spend our whole lives building it. Our names, our memories, our fears, our dreams, like a little house made of stories. And yet, if we stop for a moment and look closely, we can see that this house has no walls. The stories change. The faces change. Even to me, that seems so real shifts with every breath. What we call I is just a gentle gathering of moments, like ripples forming for a while on the surface of a river, then fading back into the flow. So, when death comes, what really disappears? Maybe not the river, but only the shape we've taken for a time. Maybe memory, what we call our past, isn't lost, but simply dissolves into something larger, a field that holds everything. You can think of it like this. If your life were a song, then death doesn't destroy the melody. It just stops playing in one room, so it can start playing another, maybe softer, maybe in a new key. The note still exists in the air, carried by the wind of intention, of love, of everything you've ever touched with your heart. That's how karma works, not as punishment or reward, but as resonance, like a bell that keeps humming long after the strike. Our choices echo through time. Every act of kindness, every moment of anger, every whisper of compassion, they all shape the vibration, the stream that carries us. Sometimes I imagine it like a candle lighting another candle. The flame doesn't jump from one to the next. It just continues, unchanged but new. The wax is different. The shape is new. But the light is the same. It's not you that travels. It's the movement of awareness itself, remembering its own warmth. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because if there is no fixed self, no solid I moving through time, then death isn't something that happens to you. It's just another part of the movement, like a wave falling back into the ocean or a leaf returning to the soil. Nothing truly ends. It just changes form. I once met a woman who had lost her husband after 40 years together. She told me something I'll never forget. She said, "Sometimes when I sit in the garden, I can feel him. Not as a ghost, not as a thought, just as presence. Like the air feels heavier, softer somehow." She didn't mean it in a spooky way. She just meant that love doesn't vanish. It becomes part of everything. And maybe that's what continues. Not our personality, not our memories as we know them, but the deeper vibration of who we've been, the tenderness we've shared, the awareness we've expanded. It's like the river of consciousness carries those currents forward, mixing them into new streams. In that way, nothing's wasted. Nothing's gone. Still, I get it. It's hard to imagine letting go of everything we've known. We cling to identity because it gives us shape, But what if that shape is what keeps us small? What if the moment we let go is the moment we realize we were never inside the story to begin with? We were the space holding it. Sometimes I think death is just consciousness remembering how to breathe freely again, without the weight of thought, without the limits of form. Imagine that first instant. No fear, no body, no me. Just light, just peace. Not as an idea, but as reality. And the moment you realize that what you truly are can't die, that's when life finally makes sense. There's a teaching that says, the one who dies before they die will never die. It means that if you can let go of your attachments now, the mind, the me, the endless holding, you can taste freedom even before the body ends. You can live in peace before you go anywhere. And maybe that's the point of all this. Not to prove what happens after death, but to wake up before it, to stop waiting for peace to come later, and start touching it right now. When you realize that everything you're clinging to is already flowing away, something beautiful happens. Your grip softens. You start living with more tenderness. You speak more gently. You stop needing to win every argument. Because deep down you know none of this lasts, and that's what makes it precious. So, what happens to consciousness after death? Maybe it just keeps moving, guided by the weight of our choices, like a river finding its way through new valleys. Maybe it remembers kindness more than names, compassion more than achievements. And maybe, in that endless unfolding, each of us becomes a tiny spark in the great fire of awareness, shining through different forms, different times, but always the same light. If that's true, then the question isn't, what happens when I die? The question is, how alive am I right now? Because if consciousness is a river, every moment you're alive is shaping its flow. Every act, every intention, every whisper of love is a new drop of rain feeding that current. So maybe the work isn't to escape death, but to flow with life so fully that when death comes, it feels like coming home. And if this way of seeing brings you peace, if it helps you breathe a little easier, maybe stay with me a little longer. Subscribe if you like, not for numbers, not for algorithms, but just to keep this quiet space alive. A place where we can remember together that it's okay not to have all the answers. It's okay to wonder. It's okay to feel small in front of something infinite. Because maybe that's what consciousness really wants. Not certainty, but awe. And maybe, just maybe, death is not the end of the story. It's the silence between chapters before the next begins. You know, there's something wild about how close modern science is getting to what the Buddha said under that ancient tree. For most of human history, we believe consciousness was something that happened inside the skull, an echo of electrical signals and chemical reactions. We thought the brain was a theater and awareness was the play. But slowly, quietly, the edges of that story have started to crack. Doctors, researchers, even some hardline materialists have begun to face cases that don't fit the old map. People whose hearts stop for minutes, sometimes hours, and came back describing moments of clarity that no brain deprived of oxygen should be capable of. They tell of floating above their bodies, watching the surgeons at work, hearing conversations later verified to be true, not dreamlike, not hazy, but crisp, vivid, unmistakably real. And what do you do with that? How do you explain awareness functioning when the very organ supposed to create it has gone dark? Some scientists call it hallucination, but others whisper something deeper. Maybe consciousness doesn't arise from the brain at all. Maybe the brain is just a receiver, like a radio picking up waves that were always there. When the radio breaks, the music doesn't die. It just keeps playing, invisible, waiting for another instrument to catch its tune. It's strange, isn't it? We built satellites that see galaxies forming billions of light years away, Yet we still don't know what the mind is or where thoughts come from. Every scan, every EEG, every neuron we've mapped only tells us what happens when awareness moves, not what it is. As one neuroscientist once said, we found the footprints, but not the walker. And that brings us right back to what the Buddha taught. That consciousness isn't something we own. It's something we share. It's not locked inside your skull. It's woven into reality itself. When he spoke of dependent origination, he meant that everything arises together, mind and matter, perception and form, like two sides of one coin. There is no world outside of awareness, and no awareness outside of the world. When you really let that sink in, death stops feeling like a doorway into nothingness. It starts to feel like the falling away of boundaries. Because if consciousness isn't confined to your brain, then it was never born in the first place. It just shifted its focus for a while, played this game of being you. I remember reading about a man who was clinically dead for almost 10 minutes. When he came back, the first thing he said wasn't that I saw a light, it was that I was the light. He didn't mean it in a poetic way. He meant it as a fact. He said he felt more awake, more himself than ever before. He wasn't looking at anything. He was everything. Every atom, every vibration, every breath of the universe. And when he returned his body, it felt like trying to pour an ocean into a cup. Now, you can believe or doubt stories like that. But the deeper point is this. Again and again, across cultures and centuries, people touch something beyond explanation. Something that feels more real than reality itself. And all those whispers seem to be pointing toward the same truth the Buddha saw. Consciousness doesn't end. It just changes frequency. Maybe that's why he called it the unborn, the undying. Because what we are at the deepest level, the pure knowing, was never created, so it can't be destroyed. It's not personal. It's not separate. It's the clear sky behind every passing cloud. Science is catching glimpses of it now, even if it doesn't have the language for it yet. Quantum physicists talk about entanglement, how two particles can be connected across time and space, behaving as one even when separated by light years. That's not mysticism. That's data. And it starts to sound a lot like what monks have been saying for 2,500 years, that everything is one movement, one mind, expressing itself through infinite forms. And maybe, just maybe, the boundary between science and spirituality isn't a wall at all. Maybe it's a mirror. Two languages trying to describe the same silence. Because when we strip away the jargon, the formulas, the robes, and the rituals, what both sides are really saying is this. Reality is more alive than we think. Consciousness is not a side effect of matter. Matter is a reflection of consciousness. And if that's true, then death is just the illusion of a curtain. When it falls, the play doesn't end. The actor simply steps backstage, takes a breath, and smiles, remembering that the whole show was never separate from the light that made it visible. So maybe that's why the Buddha didn't argue about heaven or hell. He simply said, see clearly, because if you see clearly enough, you'll realize you were never inside the story at all. You were the witness, the dreamer, the awareness that holds it all. And that changes everything, not just how we die, but how we live. Because once you taste that truth, even for a moment, you stop rushing. You stop fighting the current. You start living from something vast, gentle, fearless. And if that thought stirs something in you, stay with it. Breathe into it. Let's keep walking this strange, beautiful path together. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring, not as followers, but as fellow travelers chasing the same mystery. Because maybe the real miracle isn't surviving death. It's realizing you were never truly born. You can feel it, can't you? that subtle tightening in the chest when we think of the end. It doesn't even need to be our own death. Sometimes it's a thought of losing someone, watching time slowly erase faces, places, moments that once felt eternal. It's like we're clinging to something made of smoke, hoping our hands can keep it from slipping away. And the more we grasp, the more it fades. The Buddha saw that fear long before modern psychology gave it names. He said the fear of death isn't really about dying. It's about mistaken identity. We spent a lifetime thinking we're this collection of stories, memories, and names. I'm this person. I did those things. I'm loved by these people. But when the body starts to fail, all those stories tremble. We panic, not because life is ending, but because the me we thought we were is unraveling. It's like waking from a dream you don't want to end. But what if death isn't the ending of the dream? What if it's the moment you open your eyes and realize you were dreaming the whole time? Maybe that's why so many who've had near-death experiences describe it as peace. Not fear, not confusion. Just the pure relief of remembering who they truly are. In the Buddhist view, fear comes from attachment, from clinging to what cannot stay. We cling to youth, to beauty, to our plans, to the sound of a loved one's laughter. And the more tightly we hold, the more pain we feel when life changes shape. But here's the secret that the Buddha whispered. Nothing real can ever be lost. What passes away is only form, the temporary face of something eternal. You probably felt it before, even if you didn't name it. That quiet sense, maybe during a sunset or when music hits just right, when you feel like you're both here and somewhere beyond. For a breath, you stop thinking and you're just aware, open, spacious, connected to everything. That's what the Buddha called nirvana. Not a place, not a heaven, just freedom from the grip of fear. And maybe it's okay to admit that fear still lingers. Maybe we don't need to chase it away. When you stop fighting the fear, something shifts. You start to see it as part of the same play. The mind trying to protect what it thinks is you. The trick isn't to kill fear, but to walk beside it, to look in the eye and say, I see you, but you're not all of me. When the Buddha faced death, he didn't perform miracles or beg for more time. He simply lay down under the trees, smiled, and said, all conditioned things are impermanent. Strive diligently. Those were his last words. Not a cry, not a sermon. Just truth. He wasn't saying, be detached. He was saying, see clearly, because when you see things as they are, even death loses its teeth. Imagine standing at the edge of the ocean. The waves come and go, crashing and retreating. Every wave thinks it's separate, shouting, I am me, before falling back into the sea. But the truth is, it was never separate. It was always the ocean pretending to be a wave. That's what you are, the ocean, not the wave. Consciousness doesn't end at death, because it was never born in the first place. The wave dissolves, but the water remains. And maybe the purpose of life isn't to escape death, but understand it. To live so deeply that when death comes, it feels like another breath. The Buddha didn't promise immortality. He offered understanding. He said that when we awaken, death becomes as natural as sleep, something we drift into, not something that rips us apart. Sometimes, when I watch the night sky, I think about how stars die. Their light travels for millions of years before it fades from our eyes. And even then, that light keeps moving, touching galaxies we'll never see. Maybe we're like that. Maybe our consciousness, our awareness, is light that never truly disappears, just changes direction, just keeps traveling. And maybe that's a quiet invitation at the heart of Buddhism, to stop fearing the dark and start trusting the light that's always been shining behind it. You don't have to understand it all right now. Just breathe. Let yourself feel the space behind your thoughts, that soften of awareness that's always been there. That's you, the part that doesn't age, doesn't vanish, doesn't belong to time. If you can feel even a spark of that, stay with it. Stay close. That's the beginning of freedom. And if you like to keep walking through this mystery together, keep listening. Keep opening your heart. Hit subscribe, not for me, but for the reminder that you're not walking alone. We're all here, learning to let go, learning to remember what we truly are. Because in the end, death isn't the opposite of life. It's the other side of love. You see, the fear of death doesn't disappear by running away from it. It dissolves when we learn to meet it, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. That's why the Buddha taught mindfulness the way he did. Every breath, every step, every feeling, a small death, a small letting go. When you breathe in, life arrives. When you breathe out, something leaves. And in that rhythm, something profound is hiding in plain sight. You are constantly dying and being reborn with every breath. The self you were a moment ago, gone. The thought you had a second ago, vanished. Even your body, cell by cell, is a river that never stops moving. But because the change is slow, we forget. We think we're permanent, when in truth, we're flickering like candlelight in the wind. Meditation is a way to remember that truth without fear. It's not about escaping the world. It's about sitting so still that you finally notice how the world keeps passing through you. And yet, something in you never moves. That something, that clear, steady awareness, is the part that never dies. It's what watches the rise and fall of thoughts, emotions, memories, and even this fragile body. When you find that awareness, really touch it, death loses its hold. There's a story of a monk who asked his teacher, "What happens when we die?" The teacher simply said, "Why ask about death? You've never even understood life." That's the point. Dying before you die means to wake up from the illusion that you were ever separate from the flow. When you close your eyes and notice your thoughts drifting, you can start to see how they appear from nowhere and vanish back into silence, just like clouds in the sky. You can't hold a cloud, and you can't stop it from changing shape. The more you try, the more restless you feel. But when you let it float freely, something peaceful opens up. That's the heart of mindfulness, learning to let go before life takes it from you. Maybe that's why the masters always seem so calm. It's not that they don't feel sadness or loss. It's that they practice surrender so deeply that nothing in them clings anymore. They've already died to the false self, the one that's always chasing, fearing, comparing, protecting. What remains is love, pure and unshakable. To die before you die is to stop identifying with the storm and rest as the sky. It's the moment you stop saying, "This is happening to me," and start realizing, "This is happening in me." Pain, joy, failure, success, they're all waves passing to the same ocean of awareness. When you taste that truth, even for an instant, you feel a kind of freedom words can't touch. And maybe that's what real awakening is, not a lightning strike or a miracle, but the simple, quiet understanding that you were never the story playing in your head. You were the space it was unfolding in. The watcher behind the thoughts, behind the heartbeat, behind the fear. Every time you sit in silence, every time you watch your breath without trying to control it, you're practicing that little death. The death of control, of identity, of the constant me that wants to own everything. It's a rehearsal for the final letting go, when the body can no longer hold you. But if you've practiced surrender 1,000 times in small ways, that last moment won't be a terror. It will be familiar. It will feel like coming home. The Buddha called this nibbana, the cooling of the fire, the moment when craving and fear no longer burn you from the inside. It's not cold, it's peaceful, like exhaling after a lifetime of holding your breath. And maybe the most beautiful part is that you don't have to wait for death to taste that peace. It's right here, in this moment, waiting in the pause between one thought and the next. You don't have to earn it. You just have to notice it. So as you listen now, take a slow breath. Feel the rise of the chest, the fall of the belly. Feel the stillness between the breaths. That stillness, that's you. Not your name, not your story. You, the timeless awareness that watches life unfold like a movie on a screen, knowing it's all a play of light. Maybe that's what the Buddha meant when he said, "The wise do not mourn the dead. They see no one as born, no one as gone. Because once you've died before dying, you see through the game. You don't cling, you don't run, you simply love, fully without fear." And maybe that's the real reason you're here, listening to this. Not to find answers, but to remember. To remember what's been whispering inside you all along, that the one who's aware of death can never die. If you can feel even a shimmer of that truth, hold it gently. Let it soften your breath, your heart, your whole being. And if you'd like to keep exploring this path, together, slowly, deeply, subscribe so you don't forget to return. Not to me, but to yourself. Because the real journey isn't after death. It's the journey of waking up before it. When you start seeing life clearly, when you practice dying before dying, something incredible happens. You realize that fear and craving aren't just personal problems. They're the lenses through which we see the world. And when those lenses fall away, even a little, the world looks different. Colors are sharper, sounds are fuller, moments are richer. And, most surprisingly, other people matter in a way that's gentle and real, not needy or desperate. You probably notice it in yourself. Those rare moments when you feel a surge of care for someone without any reason. A friend, a stranger, even an animal. It's like your heart is suddenly wider, and it can hold more than just your own story. That's compassion arising naturally from awareness. It's not something you have to force. It blooms when you stop clutching your small self so tightly. Buddhism has this beautiful way of explaining it. The same stream of consciousness that flows through you flows through everyone else. What you see as other is really a reflection, a mirror of the same river. So when you touch suffering in another, it's not separate from your own. And when you respond with kindness, the current of the river moves just a little more smoothly. I remember hearing about a teacher who spent years in silence in the mountains. One day, he saw a child crying by a river. The child's tears didn't startle him, didn't disturb him. They just reached him. And in that reach, he felt a profound connection, like electricity passing through water. The child's sorrow became a lesson. Awareness without compassion is empty. Compassion without awareness is blind. Together, they make life feel alive. And maybe that's why awakening isn't about escaping the world. It's about entering it more fully. It's about noticing the beauty in a leaf, the smile in a stranger, the quiet rhythm of your own breath. It's about understanding that each moment is fleeting, and that's what makes it precious. The river flows, but each drop matters. Think about the people you love, the ones you've lost, the ones you hold close. When you awaken a little more, you realize you've been carrying them not in memory alone, but in the flow of your awareness. Every act of kindness, every word spoken gently, every smile shared, it becomes part of the current. It continues even after your body fades. And the magic is this. You don't have to do anything extraordinary. You don't need to climb mountains or chant endlessly. You just need to notice, to breathe, to touch life as it is. That's the practice. That's the way the stream moves, effortlessly, naturally, without forcing, without judgment. There's a story from a small village. A woman, living an ordinary life, noticed that the river near her home had become polluted. Instead of despairing, she began picking up litter, planting trees, and helping her neighbors understand the value of the river. Years later, the river flowed cleaner, the village felt lighter, and the small, consistent act of care created ripples far beyond what she could have imagined. This is the current of compassion. Every small, mindful act matters. Every intention matters. And this brings us back to death again, gently. When the end comes, what remains isn't the body, the possessions, or even the accomplishments. What remains is the love you carried, the awareness you nurtured, the way you touched the world. That's the current that continues, beyond the last breath, beyond memory, beyond form. So maybe living fully and dying peacefully are not separate. Maybe they are the same practice. Each breath, each act, each awareness of the other, each choice to let go, that is the way we prepare quietly for the final journey. Not by fearing it, not by grasping for it, but by embracing life as it flows. And if this little reflection touches something inside you, hold it softly. Let it ripple through your day. And if you want to walk further along this river together, subscribe, not to follow me, but to remind yourself to return to your own awareness, to notice the current, to touch life more deeply. Because the truth is simple. When you awaken even a little, the world isn't smaller, it's bigger. Not because you grow, but because you let the river of awareness carry more love than before. It's easy to think that awakening is something distant, something that only happens to monks meditating in caves or sages on mountaintops. But the truth is, it unfolds in the simplest, most mundane moments, making tea, walking to work, listening to a friend. Every breath, every glance, every pause is an invitation to notice, to remember that the same awareness that watches life also watches death, and that there is no need to wait for some dramatic moment to awaken. Think about your mornings. How often do we wake up on autopilot, scrolling phones, rehearsing worries, running the same loops? And yet, if for just 1 minute we notice the warmth of the sun, the rhythm of our breath, the beating of our heart, life changes. That small attention, it's like dropping a pebble into a pond. The ripples extend far beyond the initial act. Your presence, your kindness, even your quiet acknowledgement of what is, subtly shifts the world. I remember a story of a man who worked as a janitor in a big city. Every day, he cleaned offices, swept streets, and went home unnoticed by most. But he began a simple practice. Each day as he worked, he would silently wish well to every person he saw, every office he cleaned, every street he swept. At first, it felt silly. Nobody noticed. But over months, he felt lighter, more awake, more at peace. And slowly, the people around him began to change too. A smile here, a nod there, tiny echoes of the energy he carried in the present. His life didn't change in extraordinary ways, but it changed in depth, in meaning. That's the subtle power of awareness flowing outward. When we see life this way, our choices gain clarity. Every intention matters. The anger you feel in traffic, the impatience with a co-worker, the hurried response to a loved one, these aren't trivial. They are part of the current that shapes your consciousness and the world around you. And every act of patience, every smile, every gentle word is like planting a seed that continues beyond your notice, beyond your lifetime, carrying the same stream of awareness that the Buddha described. And here's something beautiful. This doesn't demand perfection. You don't have to be kind all the time, or always mindful or free of fear. The practice is noticing the impulses, the moments when the mind wants to cling or push away, and choosing gently to let them pass. Awareness itself doesn't judge. It just observes. And in that observation, you begin to taste freedom. You begin to see that the river of consciousness flows whether you fight it or not, and you can either swim against it or ride it with grace. In a way, living fully is like rehearsing for the ultimate letting go. Every conscious choice, every moment of patience, every act of care is training the mind to be spacious, steady, and awake. That way, when the final moment arrives, it's not a shock. It's familiar. It's flowing naturally with the current you've been nurturing all along. And maybe that's why the Buddha never made it about grand gestures or extraordinary feats. It was always about the ordinary, done with extraordinary attention. Every meal eaten mindfully, every conversation held with care, every breath noticed. Each one is a brushstroke painting a life lived awake. So, as you move through your day, perhaps the invitation is simple. Notice. Watch the rise and fall of thoughts. Feel the contact of your feet on the ground. Listen deeply when someone speaks. When frustration comes, breathe into it. When joy arises, allow it to expand. Each moment is a doorway. Each small act is part of the river that will carry you, whether in this life or beyond, toward clarity, peace, and freedom. And if this resonates with you, remember to stay connected. Subscribe, not to follow me, but to create reminders for yourself, moments to return, to notice, to live fully. Because the real practice isn't in grand teachings or lofty ideas. It's in the ordinary, alive now, flowing like the river, moment by moment, choice by choice, breath by breath. Maybe now you can see it a little more clearly. Life is a river, not a cup to fill or a candle to preserve. Every moment flows, every thought rises and falls, every breath appears and disappears. We are not the water, but the awareness that watches it move. And in that simple truth lies freedom. All the fear we carried about death, it softens when we begin to see that death isn't an erasure. It's a turning, a transformation. The body may dissolve. The stories we cling to may fade. But the current continues, shaped by intention, carried by love, and guided by attention. That current is what we've been calling consciousness. It isn't a thing. It isn't a soul. It isn't something we can hold. It's the very movement of life, moment to moment. And here's the quiet miracle. We don't have to wait for death to experience this freedom. Every conscious breath, every kind act, every moment of noticing the heart, the mind, the world, is practice. It's like rehearsing for final dance, but also dancing fully now. When you let go of the illusion of a fixed self, when you stop gripping at outcomes and stories, the present moment blooms into peace. You realize that the ordinary, washing dishes, walking to work, speaking softly to a friend, is extraordinary if noticed fully. Compassion, too, is inseparable from this awareness. Once you feel your own river flowing, you can't help but notice the currents of others. Suffering, joy, fear, love, they are not separate from you. And the more we respond with kindness and care, the more the stream of life moves with ease. Your small actions ripple outward, subtle yet profound, touching places and people far beyond what you can see. Think again of that candle metaphor. When one candle lights another, the flame continues. It's not the same flame, but it's connected, carried forward. That's how love, awareness, and intention move through the world, beyond birth, beyond death, beyond time. The question isn't whether the river continues after the body ends. It's how consciously we allow it to flow while we are here. And maybe that's a heart of the teaching. Liberation is not about escaping life. It's about fully entering it. Each moment of presence, each letting go, each act of love is a step toward freedom. Death will come, of course, but when it does, it will not be a terror. It will be a familiar turning, a continuation of the current you've been nurturing, a gentle release into what has always been waiting, clarity, peace, and openness. So, take a breath now. Feel it. Let it remind you that everything you need is already here. The awareness that watches, the heart that cares, the river that flows. You are not lost. You are not ending. You are moving, alive, awake, participating in a mystery far greater than the small stories you carry. If any of this resonates, if even a quiet flicker of understanding has touched you, remember to return. Subscribe, not for the sake of the channel, but for yourself. A gentle nudge to come back to the river, to notice, to awaken, to live fully. And perhaps with time, the fear that once gripped you will soften, and you'll begin to see that the only thing you've ever needed is right here, flowing within you, always. Because in the end, life and death are not opposites. They're the same river, endlessly moving, and you are both the water and the awareness that watches it, always free, always present, always part of something larger than yourself.